All right. Hello. Welcome to my channel talking about in-home elderly care. Tonight, we are going to talk about establishing a routine. We've talked about several different steps along the way, doing initial assessment, getting customer buy-in, a stakeholder buy-in, and several different details under that. And there's a bunch of different ways this thing could play out. But we're going to talk tonight from the perspective of if you have made the decision to do in-home elderly care for a loved one or just somebody you're deciding to do it for. But it would be hard to imagine doing this outside of someone that is a loved one. Most likely someone in your family, but definitely a loved one. And as you can see, I've got my Fuquay Varina Bengals shirt on tonight. Used to be the Bengal Tigers, now it's just the Bengals. So something has changed over the years. But that's where Ruth, my grandmother, who I assisted, and my grandfather, John Kenton, where they were from, Fuquay Varina, and then a small province right beside of it, Willow Springs, or it's like an unincorporated area, or it used to be. Actually, that changed too. We always grew up saying Willow Springs, plural. But apparently that's been wrong because it's Willow Spring, singular. So I'm going to throw the slides up here, but actually before I do, I'm going to do something a little different just to switch it up. So me and my cousins, siblings and cousins, we all have a group text thread that we started a handful of months ago since Ruth died in September. And one of my cousins sent a video of Ruth playing the piano, but he did it it's a cell phone video of a cell phone video. So he took it on his old phone and wasn't able to transcribe it over. And so he shot a video of his old phone playing a video of Ruth playing piano. So I think you're going to have the audio here, but I'm going to actually start with that. So let me go to that. All right, and let me get this sucker to play. Yeah, I don't know what she said there at the end, but she liked to play piano. She always had a piano our whole life, and she liked music. She liked listening to music, and yeah, we were able to receive the benefits of that, having musical influence. So just those nice moments between grandparents and grandchildren. We all have them. I'm sure you've got several like yourself, or several yourself that you received from your grandparents. So, all right, cool. Cherished memories, right? So, again, today we're going to talk about establishing a routine. I've got up on the slide. So, again, let's say that you're going to do this. One of the first things, if not the first thing you want to do, is start to establish a routine. What you're going to find, and again, this is just in a normal scenario. There isn't like an impending ailment that could see a dramatic change at any moment, i.e. Some sort of cancer or Alzheimer's, or just some sort of quick-moving, debilitating issue. Ruth did have medical issues, which I've kind of touched on and can go into some of the details about that probably in later videos, but nothing where we thought, the other shoe was going to drop at any moment. Even with her vision, when she lost her vision, it was gradual, many years, several years. Same thing with her hearing, same thing with losing her mobility. Was Yeah, it was several years. It wasn't anything that, she woke up one day and she was blind, or she didn't have any conditions where we knew that it was just, a ticking clock, and then it was going to be like a completely different world after that moment happens. So let me switch over the slides here. All right, and let me see there. Okay, cool. I think on the last video, I had my image covering up some of the lettering of the slides. That doesn't look like it's going to be a problem tonight. Establishing a routine. So the first thing you want to do is to create a draft schedule. All right, and here's what I mean by that. And not that you've got to lock things in at a military level of fashion. Where breakfast has to be at 0700 every morning, and there's 30 minutes that we have allotted for that breakfast, and on Mondays it will be this, and then on Tuesdays it will be that. If you can bring that level of detail, it probably helps to iron out conflicts and complications. But most of the time, this treatment that you're giving and the whole situation that you're in, it needs to have that structure, but it needs to be a soft structure. It needs to be flexible structure. So you're going to have to balance the line of how much is too much structure and how much is not enough. And I would say to not have any structure at all, and to quote, take each day as it comes. And there are some elements where you'll need to do that. But you don't want to wing it, the whole thing. You do want to have some structure in there. You do want to have a schedule created. So just pen and paper, or use, create an Excel chart, or like I'm doing here, slides with PowerPoint, or whatever it might be, a Word document with a list, and just draw out the 7 days. And these are just, a typical week, nothing special. We're not accounting for the week of Christmas. That'll be a change in the routine, or a birthday or something like that. We're talking about just a regular, normal week, all 7 days, have them scheduled out. And with elderly people, or people in general, but especially elderly people, your cornerstones of that daily schedule are going to be your meals. So that's where you're going to want to start, and you're going to, as we all know, just because we're humans in this world living life, we all know that breakfast is going to happen sometime in the earlier portion of the morning. Lunch is going to happen sometime in the late morning or early afternoon, and dinner is going to happen sometime in the early evening or mid-evening. Elderly people, in general, have a reputation of liking an early dinner. I would say for Ruth, it wasn't for all of her meals. She liked an earlier breakfast. There was a period there at the end where we were giving her breakfast later. But heck, when I first started taking care of her, she was up. I'd get up at 5:30, and she'd already be up, like talking about making a cup of coffee. She'd have coffee. There was a medication she had to take on an empty stomach. But she was up and early, and then wanting to eat something in the next hour or so. She took insulin too, so that also had to be accounted for. Lunch, the same thing. Sometimes it would be a little bit earlier. Sometimes it would be a little bit later. Most of the time it was right around noon. And then for dinner, as I was saying a moment ago, she pretty much liked to have dinner like around 6, like a standard dinner time. And then, as the schedule would change, or just meaning like things would come up and we would need to adjust, we would adjust. If she was going to a doctor's appointment, she liked to have her doctor's appointment either in the late morning or early afternoon. She didn't like to be rushed. So if that was happening and she was doing a late morning appointment, she would, whoever was taking her, most likely would stop and get food. And so she would have her lunch meal accounted for there, and that might be a late lunch. She might not actually be eating till she got home around 1:30 or 2, but that would be accounted for. And then the same thing if it was a late, if it happened to be like a 3:30 or 4 o'clock appointment, same thing, stop and get food. And then it might not be, 6 would put her about on schedule, but just saying it might be somewhere outside of that normal range of time. but still she would eat it, and that would be accounted for. So start by planning your schedule around the meals, and then figuring out what needs to go in between those gaps of the meals. Again, for her, she was more mobile at first, and not that she was like getting out of the house, meaning she was driving places and stuff. By the time that I started staying with her, she'd stopped driving altogether, so that wasn't an issue. But she did like to stay busy in the house, so she would find an activity or something to do. Most of the time, it involved cleaning or straightening up something. So um, uh, a lot of clutter in the house, and she always had projects that she was working on. And then she also liked to be outside. She always had a garden when we were younger growing up. And she didn't necessarily keep that portion of it, having like a full blown garden with vegetables and all of that. But she had flower beds. She had geraniums and, hanging plants and that kind of thing that she would want to water. She loved the birds. She had several bird feeders. She liked to put out bird seeds. So she had activities and stuff that she would do throughout the day. But things were kind of centered around that eating schedule in terms of the initial blueprint for a plan or a schedule for her. So start there, and then later on, into these last couple of years, she was pretty much on the sofa. So she would get up and have meals, and then she would go back to the sofa and watch TV, or she would listen to it rather, because her vision started to fail her. At the very end, she needed assistance going to the bathroom, so she would call on us to assist her to the bathroom. We would do that, but again, she was mostly there on the sofa. So what you want to do is start there with a draft schedule. Just get a roundabout idea of preferences. When do you want to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And you can even go into detail with that to some of the more specifics of what they would even like to have for those meals, or if they have any preferences there. And then, you want to discuss and confirm that schedule with them first and foremost. So you do the initial draft, and then you bring it to them and present it, and just make sure that you're on the same page with everything. And again, staying flexible and fluid about it. And once you've got that set, you can start understanding how the days are actually going to play out. Next point I've got under that is to discuss it with the stakeholders. This should be a pretty straightforward conversation, but again, families are complicated, and sometimes things that should be straightforward don't come across or don't land straightforward. But the main thing is that you do want them knowing what's going on, so they can be aware of it. Especially, they're stakeholders, so they're involved in some regard. So we talked about, defining what a stakeholder is, most likely a family member or a close friend. And most likely, or very common, that they have some sort of legal tie to the customer. So you definitely want them knowing at least the basics of the schedule, and you also just want them knowing that you've got it under control. I'm sure you've all had an experience in your life, be it personal or professional, where, say, like, you do have the initial conversation with the stakeholder about what the plan is, and that you're going to assist this elderly individual with their home care, and then they don't ever hear from you again, or it's a month or two down the road, and they don't know what's going on. So again, you want to do things in a posturing of public facing. You want what's going on in general to be known amongst the family, and to essentially have it open if anyone's got questions about it. But really, if they have questions about it, they should be coming up in these conversations. Not that people can't ask questions after that, but the lion's share of the questions should be coming up in these conversations, and making sure everyone's on the same schedule. So I've got with the customer to confirm it. With the stakeholder, I do not have that, because I don't think that it's absolutely critical to have the stakeholders' confirmation with the schedule. Just like it's not critical, or it's not an absolute deal breaker if you don't have a stakeholder's confirmation by doing the in-home elderly care, but it makes things a lot smoother if you do. It's an added complication We've talked about ironing out all the complications you can ahead of time so that you're not dealing with them while you're in the moment. And the same thing here. If you have a stakeholder that doesn't, whatever, they don't want her. I was going to say something with the meals, but I guess that would be like a difficult challenge. Or it might. Actually, I will go with that. I was going to say it might sound like something ridiculous, like somebody having issues. She wants to eat at 11:30. I don't like that. She cannot have lunch before noon. That sounds ridiculous, but I guess I will use that as an example because, again, families are complicated and something that should be straightforward and come across as pretty routine. Ridiculous things can be made of nothing. And, luckily I didn't have this issue with Ruth, but you might be in a different circumstance, a different customer, different stakeholders, of course, and it could be an issue, or it could be an objection that you're presented with. But that's okay. If the customer's on the same page with it and everyone has a general understanding of what's going on, and again, these are open, something like the schedule, like I'm saying, is going to be something that's flexible. So heck, maybe in some off chance, Uncle Leroy did know what he was talking about, and it's bad for the customer to have lunch at 11:30, and actually 12:15 or 12:30 is a better time. So okay, well then just make that adjustment and move forward. It's not the end of the world. But just because someone's giving you a hard objection, especially about something low stakes like the time lunch is being eaten, if the crux of the conversation is that no lunch is being eaten, or there is not a slot for lunch, okay, well that'd be a reasonable objection. But something like the time or what, okay, that's not critical that you have their absolute buy-in on. But it's better if you do have buy-in from them on all of these things. Okay, the next line I've got after that is about delegating initial supports. Okay, just to touch on these three areas, and they're not totally inclusive. There could be more sub genres, I guess we'll say, that you could add here. But I went off of the way that we had set things up. So there were three stakeholders of Ruth's that we had set up a system and delegated these particular responsibilities to. The first one being medical support. So one of her sons took her to all of her medical appointments. I took her to a lot of medical appointments. My younger sister that was staying with her took her to a lot of medical appointments, but we got to a point where we weren't able to do it anymore, or just as frequently, or we just needed some additional support. And so we delegated that responsibility out to one of her sons. So it was taking her to her appointments, making appointments for appointments, filling prescriptions for her. And luckily she had a delivery service, so they would actually deliver those medications to the house. But if she was coming from, she was feeling bad and she went to the doctor and the doctor said, hey, I'm going to give you these 2 scripts to take for the next 2 or 3 weeks, and she needed it filled in the moment, he would take her by the pharmacy and get those filled in real time. So everything concerning the medical piece, we had delegated out. That also goes for, the way that the medical infrastructure is set up now, and I really like this, is that, pretty much any doctor you go to, or pharmacy or whatever, all the commerce is done online, all the communication is done online. And so you can, use the portal to message them, or use the portal to set up appointments or ask questions. I like that. And I think, I'm not in the medical field, but I think that the medical professionals like that the best too, because what I've noticed is I would call them and I would not get a call back until the very end of the day, or maybe like early the next day. And like the moment has already passed. But I could send them a message, and heck, maybe I'd hear back 15 minutes later, from the message portal. Or if you're asking for a prescription to be refilled, it's click, click, click. Most of the routes were pretty straightforward. But and I don't know how long prescriptions last. There's a time frame on it. But every time she would get, to 6 months, so she would have to, again, I don't know the time frame offhand, but let's say that her insulin prescription was only good for 6 months. Well, every time she needed one within that 6 month window, I could just order it, or I could just request for it, or her son could. But then at the end of that 6 months, the request would go out, and they would say, "Hey, well, we need the doctor to sign another prescription, and then we can fill it." So good. I think that works better like that versus trying to go over the phone and everything. And that was ultimately what her son was responsible for. He was doing all of that stuff. The next one is financial support. Financial support, I've got it written as financial support. It sounds like people giving the customer money, and it could be that. That was not the situation with Ruth. I think I've mentioned previously, her and John were very old school and wise about their money and how they spent, and had set up a nest egg for themselves to mitigate a lot of things financially. But she got to a point where she was unable to manage it. And that's mostly what I mean here is financial support, or maybe financial management might be a better way to state that. Her youngest son and her youngest daughter managed that. And so anytime something came up, they would be the ones to speak to, or she would speak to them, or sometimes I spoke to them. Now, there was some empowerment down the line, meaning that they were ultimately the ones that had legal connection to the bank accounts and checking accounts and to the assets, right? But we had a debit card, so doing things like purchasing food items or purchasing just whatever. Maybe Ruth needed a shirt, or she needed to go to Target or Walmart and get something. There was a debit card that we had that we used for that, and that worked well. And frankly, I think that it works best like this. You as the caretaker, it can get complicated really quick. You as the caretaker, not just having like something like a debit card, but to be the one that's actually managing those assets and stuff. I don't know. I mean, you would need to. I was gonna say I don't know if that's the best idea, but I don't mean that to sound negative. Just saying that things can, things can. I was gonna say deteriorate. I don't know if that's the right word. I'm just trying to make the point, though, that the eyes of the family are on you. I think I've said that in one form or fashion. So if something looks off, okay, you're probably going to create complications for yourself, because there's going to be a lot of stuff happening behind the scenes, chatter and such, that people may say to your face, or they may not, but still those perceptions are there. And hey, look, and not that we have to live our life for what everyone thinks about us, okay? Like, no, of course not. But if you're going to do this, you've got to care to a certain extent what people think of you, especially your family, especially those stakeholders that are involved. You got to care so much. And I get it. I'm putting out these videos. Maybe I get trolled in the comments. And I don't care what Jimmy Blue Eyes 23149, says about my videos, right? I mean, that's the kind of set of people that you can say, well, I don't really care what they think. But if you're doing this particular thing, like, you've got to care to a certain degree, and it's just an added pressure to make sure that things are running right, and not just that they're running right, but the look of it is right as well. Because again, it just adds another complication, and something goes wrong, and then people are blaming or calling into question your competence to handle the care of the customer, and then handle the care of the assets, the money and assets. And so we had multiple eyes on it, and it worked well. And every time there was a question or something that came up, we were able to address it. And every time that we had to expand service because that's something that happened a couple of times. It started with me and my younger sister. Then we asked a family that were friends of ours to come in and assist a mother and her two daughters, and that worked for a while. Then we had to ask, gosh, we had to bring in two more people on the weekends and then two more people to help out during the week. And we were going to be spending more money, right? And so we wanted to let them know, the financial managers, we wanted to let them know that, hey, this is the situation, this is her condition, this is what we've discussed with her, and we're going to be spending more money, so you need to be tracking on that and make sure that everyone's on the same page. The last bullet point that I've got there is about infrastructure, okay? This is infrastructure of the house. And actually, I'm going to do, now that I'm talking about, before I hit infrastructure, now I'm talking about financial support or financial management. I just barely touched the surface. There's a lot more that now is coming to my head that I could speak on. I'll do a full video on all three of those: medical support, financial management support, and infrastructure. Okay, now with infrastructure. So the way that infrastructure ran, her youngest son as well ran the infrastructure of the house. So this means that any management to the house that needed to happen, he was the POC, the point of contact to get in touch with. So if the dishwasher broke, okay, he was the individual that was going to either call somebody to fix it, have them come out and fix it, or say that dishwasher or the refrigerator or whatever was broken and it's 15 years old and the cost of repair is the same as cost of replacement, yada yada. He was the one that would go and actually manage that purchase. So select it, go out, see the need, select it, purchase it, and then be in charge of either delivering it personally or having it delivered and installed. This over the years that Ruth was alive, she needed a new furnace at one point. She needed a new roof at one point. I'm saying stuff like dishwasher and refrigerator. There was a new refrigerator that was bought. The power would go out. Pipes would get clogged. Just your typical household basic maintenance. And for the most part, I was discussing items with him because I'd be the first one on the scene. And I'm a guy, right? So I've got I know how to work with tools, and I can put eyes on something and know that if it needs to go to the next level, i.e. having a professional come and look at it. So, he managed all of that. Same thing with his son was actually her lawn care keeper. So Ruth's grandson was her lawn care keeper. Ruth's grandson is also the individual that sent that video to our cousin group chat with Ruth playing the piano. He managed all of her lawn care. So having someone in charge of your infrastructure is really important, because something's going to come up, and no matter what your background is, even if you do contracting professionally, that just means that you know somebody already that can come in and do the work, but it's going to be a rare situation that you yourself are an individual that knows literally how to do all of the maintenance needs of a facility, as issues come up. So you're going to want to have somebody in charge of that, especially if it's something that you're not going to be able to manage yourself. And really, you don't want to manage it yourself. Your responsibility is the customer, right? So taking these other life things and having other people, manage those is absolutely the way you want to go about it. All right, and I'm going to wrap up here with my slide. Of course, questions do you have on Mario at the Alpha Italian? Name and location. I'll answer them here on air. And that's all we're going to do tonight. Implementing that initial schedule and routine for the customer, and starting the process of learning what works and what doesn't, and knowing how to adjust on the fly. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.